The James Show Podcast.
You should be so jealous of me right now. I mean, what a dream it is to do my job in the face of such clownery. Because you know we're going to start off talking. This isn't what we're going to do the entire show, so don't get too fatigued here. But I enjoyed day number 4 more than days number 1, 2, and 3. But I'm really enjoying. I'm not enjoying the riot. It's terrible. The destruction of property, people being hurt, cops being hurt, things like that. That's all bad. The part I'm enjoying, though, is the reaction to it. Once an exciting event happens, good, bad, indifferent, it's part of our human response to look at the people to the left and look at the people to the right and see what they think of this, too. Or I do. I'm a total people person. I'm a big extrovert, and I just love people. They fascinate me. Their reactions fascinate me. And so in the face of something like this, one thing I enjoy is for all the people who, wave the Team Blue flag, people who vote Team Blue, wear Team Blue jerseys. You're the bad guys in this. You're quite obviously out of the two mainstream ideologies, the left and the right. You guys are the only ones that set cars on fire. Did you know they were looting stores last night? Because, that's how you bring justice to people who are being illegally deported or without due process or fascist or whatever's. We go get 10 pairs of Air Force Ones. That ought to set things straight. That's how you get justice. That's what our founding fathers stood for. That's what Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement stood for. It's for you to get some shoes. Oh, it's great, man. Like the longer this goes on, they'll never admit it to your face, but they have to be either embarrassed, and if they're not embarrassed, then they just don't realize that this pushes people. This looks bad. This makes you look bad. For dispassionate third-party observers, people who don't know, am I on Team Red or am I on Team Blue? Which team do you want to be on? The one that scratches Teslas and firebombs cars, and every time there's some sort of political grievance, whether it's free Palestine, whether it's some sort of racial grievance, or now whether it's deporting illegal immigrants, they got to go block roads. They got to get the cops out there in their riot gear. They got to make the line. They got to push them off. Things catch on fire. People start chucking bricks. Really? You think that's how you fix things around here? See, because these are the people who are telling you that you need to be worried about the threats to democracy. We should put like a little TM next to that. Like it's a threat to democracy. Like the little TM trademark sign there. If you are trying to enact political change by violence, intimidation, coercion, property destruction, that's a threat to democracy. What does Team Red do when things don't go their way? When there's some sort of enforcement mechanism, or when there's some sort of edict from on high that tends to tries to change their life without going through the proper democratic channels? Remember during COVID when you weren't allowed to go to church? Did you chuck any bricks at any cop cars? No, I didn't either. Because we're the decent human beings. We're the civilized ones. It's quite easy to see which one's civilized, which one's peaceful, and which one's the more barbaric. And I'm not saying everyone that's on Team Blue is a barbarian. Don't misunderstand me. But everyone that is a barbarian chucking bricks at cop cars, they're all on Team Blue. There's not a Team Red constituency that does that. Is that who you want to associate yourself with? You can still believe whatever you want to believe about social issues or economic issues, but are these your people? It happened in Dallas as well. We had some great coverage. Actually, round of applause for WFAA because they broke into coverage and they were doing some live coverage of the protests last night, and it's not nearly the same as it is in L.A. The cops let them block a street for about an hour, and then they got on their little plastic shields and their bicycle helmets or whatever they're wearing. They made the line, and they pushed them out of the intersection so people could get home from work or picking their kid up from soccer practice or whatever people are doing last night. And the people here were a lot more civilized. There was one guy that got right into the cop line. I don't know if he thought he was playing some sort of really hyped up game of Red Rover or whatever, but he just ran into the cop line. They put him down. They arrested him. And I think there was only one arrest. Isn't that what they were reporting this morning? WFAA said there was one arrest. So a couple of clips from their coverage last night. This is from when they made the phalanx and they started pushing them because they were in the little park that's by the bridge that they love to protest on. They should just rename that the old protest bridge. But when they got into the streets, they let them linger for about an hour. And this is when they started pushing them back. This was WFAA live last night.
As you see the protesters being boxed in, and you see some of them starting to run away. So it certainly appears as though the police tactics are beginning to work. But we do know that people have been taken into custody tonight. Okay, I'm being told that there is some sort of gas being deployed there, pepper spray or gas. And you also, I think I just saw on the bottom of the screen there, some sort of objects that looks like being tossed perhaps at police. Kind of hard to tell from that wide shot, but it does look like a little bit of a clash going on from our chopper shot.
Yeah, and from what I saw, I didn't watch like the whole 2 hours of it. I did watch a good chunk of it. I saw some water bottles being thrown at cops.
Thank you for that, Teresa. Yeah, we feel like we're in a safe position here where we can watch all of this unfold. That was a firework thrown by a protester there, not a flashbang grenade there. We have seen police officers deploy tear gas or gas of some kind to some of these protesters, which got them all out of the street now and back into that park area before. You can see they're clearing some of these trucks out of the road here now, too, from our vantage point. But we continue to see these clashes, including protesters throwing water bottles at these police officers. We can see the haze of smoke in the distance here, too, as Dallas police begin to move in to clear this protest.
Now, I want to shift the angle here and not talk about the protests themselves, but let's just can we enjoy how much the media is beclowning itself in their coverage of it? Because, you know, the idea that the news is some sort of dispassionate, unbiased third-party observer that's just bringing you the facts. I mean, you've known probably for decades that that's not true. And so how do you spin this? If you're a propagandist, if you're someone who knows that this could hurt the narrative if you don't present it in the right way, how do you prevent it? Well, one way that they're doing it is trying to say this is all Trump's fault. Yes, these are all Trump supporters out there. Trump controls how the other side acts. He's a powerful guy. But they also have to downplay what's happening on the ground, and they are going out of their way to call it peaceful. Oh, they found overwhelmingly peaceful protest again. Not January 6th. That wasn't overwhelmingly peaceful. Though when you have buildings on fire and cars on fire and shoe stores being looted and people dying and people getting hurt, and there's just smoke and chaos, and the foreign flags of 28 other countries are flying around, including Mexico and Palestine. Overwhelmingly peaceful. Graven put together the best montage just from the last couple days.
The LA County Police say that they have it under control. Carrying a flag is not illegal, as you know. What did happen in 1992 was so different from what we're seeing now. I mean, that was a real riot.
Video after video has shown that these agents are the ones provoking protesters and also making up, aggression by these protesters that later video shows people were not aggressive.
We are having an administration that's targeting peaceful protests, people that are there to protest. The president is sending the National Guard because he doesn't like the scenes. He doesn't like the scenes of people peacefully protesting.
Unrest is isolated. LA is home to millions of people, most of whom are having a normal day here on Sunday.
You know, you've heard reports that there are riots on the streets of Los Angeles. That is not what's happening across the city of Los Angeles.
Governor Newsom's right. There wasn't anything like a riot happening on Friday, Saturday.
We just witnessed a protester thanking a National Guardsman for his service here in California.
LAPD, by most estimates, had this under control last night.
No, I don't think the National Guard is needed now. Things in LA are calm. There was a protest that got a little unruly late at night.
There have been no violence where anybody that was protesting hit anybody, shot anybody, threatened anybody. Nothing has happened.
What is just a bunch of people having fun watching cars burn.
Most of those demonstrators were very peaceful. They were chanting, they were shouting. People were driving by, honking their horns.
Oh, my God. I could listen to that for hours. My next guest, James Varney from Real Clear Politics. Your reaction to the Gravian montage where they're downplaying these were just peaceful riots, James.
Hi, James. I had not heard that Tom Elliott supercut thing. I think that's who does that, or maybe it's John Gabriel. But my favorite is the guy that says, just people having some fun watching cars burn. I mean, come on.
That's a good time.
Who doesn't see that every day in the streets of the city? And I do think, and you mentioned this a little bit in your preamble before playing that Can you imagine, like, you and I and a bunch of other Americans, like down in Zocalo in Mexico City, setting fires and waving American flags, like, while we're wearing masks and all this? I think the Mexicans would be quite understandably ticked off about it. And I don't think they'd like it. I don't think they should like it. I think that's obnoxious. I don't see any reason for us to do something like that. And I think that this whole thing and the images that have come out belie what everybody was saying right there.
Do you think third-party observers, people who are otherwise neutral, can see through this, or do they buy the people on TV that are telling them this is mostly peaceful?
Well, it's hard for me to speak for all those people, right? I mean, millions of people do watch the network news. Millions of people get this kind of story in their local paper, probably from the Associated Press. So in other words, they're getting a very liberal version of what happened. I do think that there are plenty of people out there pointing out what's going on for real. I've also seen some stuff, Data Republican, small r, on Twitter, and some other people have been showing some of the she's excellent. Some of the nonprofits, the NGOs, as they're called, that have been organizing this and financing this, and probably some of the same people that are behind this day of rage we have coming up, I guess, in a couple weeks. So the news is out there. I think that there is plenty of avenues for people to get a clear picture of what's happening, but I certainly can't say which version they're going to accept or which way they're going to think.
Well, I'm also interested, this is James Varney from Real Clear Politics, in the angle that Trump started it. They were peaceful protests until Trump sent in the National Guard, and it's Trump's fault that this ever escalated into something where things caught on fire.
Right. It would be interesting to see a timeline, wouldn't it? And it was striking to see the difference between what Trump was doing and what we were hearing from Kevin Bass and Gavin Newsom and California elected officials, who seemed to be, if not encouraging what was happening, totally simpatico with it. So whether or not by the time the National Guardsmen got boots on the ground right there, maybe the peak of the fires and the whatnot had come. I don't know that, but certainly it didn't look like a situation that anybody in Los Angeles or California had any interest in putting a cap on or stopping. And these things can spill over. And look, we hear this all the time, except in contexts like this. The people who are going to be hurt the most by this are the people who live in those neighborhoods where this stuff is going on. So there is definitely a necessary protection to all of this, but I think the president was right to go down. Look at the damage that was done during the Summer of Love. You don't want a repeat of that.
Is this going to be something that's going on for months, Varney? Because I'm kind of sniffing that feeling now, because we've been doing this for 4, now going on 5 days. We have a big round of national protests coming up this week, and they have another one scheduled for like 2 weeks after that. I think they want to do another 2020.
It does look that way. And I think the reaction to this is what's really remarkable, right? So you were mentioning before the break about how they're trying to say this is Trump's fault. Well, this is a reaction to something that Trump is doing. That's true. But it's in no way a proper reaction. It's in no way in line with public safety and the law. It's insane. I mean, 2 things. One is, I think when DeSantis flew those illegal immigrants to Martha's Vineyard a couple years ago, they wanted the National Guard called out about them. That was just a couple dozen guys at an airport. And there was a Vermont, I think she's a U.S. rep recently, you might have seen this, who said, if we don't stop this, we're not going to have anybody to wipe our ass. Pardon my language. That's a quote, though. And so there's this whole echo in the modern Democrats today of who's going to pick the cotton. And they don't seem to hear it. But I find that astounding. And then if you look at the reaction that people had when Biden was in office, right? Because everybody's acting as if history began on January 21st. But a lot of this, or almost all of it, is in reaction to what Biden did. So, for example, you take that town in Ohio, if you remember this during the election, where suddenly several thousand Haitians were put there. Nobody really quite knows who put them there or how they all got there.
No, it's just organic. There's no organization there. Just a coincidence. 30,000 coincidences happened in a row.
But I didn't see them setting cars on fire and having a mini riot or a full-blown riot. They voted. Now, you were saying, or not you, but the news break just now that you had, they were saying how California officials are going to court to try and stop Trump from mobilizing the National Guard there in California. I think we all know they're going to find a judge in California that's going to rule that. But that also is, at least in theory, right, the proper response. You try to go to court. You try to have elections. You don't burn things. You don't smash windows. And I don't understand why they seem to think that this is not only okay, but this is a completely understandable reaction, and we need more of this. I don't get that. And I think that when the message comes out that this is fine, that heightens the chances that we are going to have a repeat of the Summer of Love.
Well, it's almost like they need to do this every few years or so. How often does LA riot? And you know what I'm reminded of is, we don't do this on Team Red. We don't go out in the street and scream our heads off or scream at the sky or set things on fire. But if you want to go to the classic Orwell novel 1984, there were the 2 minutes hate, which was at the very beginning of the book. And I remember not understanding, why is this even important? Why would he include this when I was in high school? But now I see this is kind of how they keep the fire burning.
An evil tumor growing, spreading in our midst. Shout out his name.
So then they put Goldstein, the supposed antagonist, on the screen at the theater, and everyone's supposed to just go nuts at it for 2 minutes. And so, I feel like that's what's going on here.
It wasn't only at the beginning of the book. That was something that happens to Winston at the beginning of the workday every day. So this is how they start things off, is by having people completely riled up, completely directing hate toward one side. There is no reasonable other side. There is no discussion or debate.
Right, but
everything is crystal clear, and if it becomes violent, that's fine.
So they take
on the right side.
They take this knife of hate and they just sharpen it, and they sharpen it with these protests and with these images and with the giant rhetoric. And soon you have a group of people who are so emotional, so divorced from logic, that they're willing to overlook Biden's cognitive decline for 5 years, even though it was happening in front of his face, and just pretend to not see reality, because really a guy with mashed potato brains would be better than literally Hitler. So once you convince them that they're fighting literally Hitler, you can get them to set cars on fire. You can get them to chuck bricks at cops. You can get them to vote for a guy that's a human Roomba.
No, you're right. I mean, they're putting the justification there. And I think it's especially troubling when you see the alleged leadership of the opposition encouraging this or failing to call things what they are. That's how you get more of it. And it's really difficult to conclude that they don't want more of it when they don't come out and say, this is out of line. This is not how we're going to do this. And again, we go back to what I was saying a moment ago, is that you did not see anything like this from 2021 to January 2025. But there was certainly awful things going on, illegal things going on. They were certainly prodding people, it seemed. So I don't understand why they feel that any of this is appropriate or that any of this is okay. But I think the message that they do think that is kind of unmistakable.
All right, well, it's fun. We'll keep an eye on it for you. And this is James Varney, Real Clear Politics. What you got coming up for us?
Actually, it's a story about immigration court. Spending some time in immigration court here in New Orleans and just letting readers know what all is going to happen, right? So you see all these stories about deportations and arrests. And, of course, there has been this incredible plummeting of people coming over the border. So of the millions of people here, most of them aren't going to be flown on airplanes to prisons in El Salvador. Most of them are going to get resolved one way or another in immigration court. So we're taking a look at that.
All right. I look forward to it. RealClearPolitics.com, RealClearInvestigations.com is his website. This is James Varney. Thank you very much, sir. Riots continue for now through day 4. Are we going to get a day 5? Can I get a day 5? Anyone a day 5? Are you going to get a day 5? Anyone a day 5? I think we are going to get a day 5. I think we might get a whole summer of this. And so what's going to stop it? Well, Trump says send in the National Guard, maybe some Marines. That might stop it. Gavin Newsom was asked How do you stop it? He had a much different answer, and I don't think this is an acceptable answer. I think he may be betraying a little bit of the truth, but I don't know if that's going to help his cause much. First, Trump wants a civil war is his talking point. Okay, let's hear this real quick.
These guys, these groups come in. They have nothing to do with these peaceful protesters. These poor peaceful protesters. These guys come in to take advantage of these moments, and that's exactly what we knew would happen. That's exactly what Trump knew was going to happen. That's exactly what his team knows. They help create these conditions to inflame them. This is Donald Trump's mess. What you see in your nightly news is Donald Trump's making, and we've got to clean up this mess. If he can't do it, we're going to have to do it.
All right, I know you're about to crash your car laughing so hard at the idea of, well, why did Donald Trump make them set those cars on fire? Why did Donald Trump make them loot a Foot Locker last night? I can't believe Donald Trump made them do all this and chuck bricks at cops. God, Donald Trump's. But remember, half the country believed these people when they were told Jussie Smollett got jumped by guys in MAGA hats. Half the country believed them when they said the Hunter laptop was Russian disinformation. Half the country still believes them. They're like, I don't know where this baggie of cocaine came from in the White House. They believed about masks and vaccines and all that stuff. These are the same people. Inflation's transitory. Oh, yeah, this will just go away in a matter of months. So with that terrible setup of, yeah, this is Trump's doing, and he's doing this because he wants a civil war. How do you end this, Gavin Newsom? Listen to this.
So what you're saying and what he's saying, very heated rhetoric. How do we cool this down? How do we get things to calm down? How do we get the streets at this point to be safe? Donald Trump needs to rescind his order, period.
So don't enforce immigration law. Don't do these mass deportations. No, I don't think that's an acceptable way. That's your demands. You're just going to keep tearing stuff up, blocking highways, setting cars on fire, destroying property, looting businesses, assaulting cops until we stop deporting people, doing the mass deportations. No, the answer is no. We can't do this. And Miss Parker kind of fussed me over the weekend because there was a guy who called in last week and said he was for open borders. And I told him he was dumb. I mean, I was a little more graceful about it. There's more of a rhetorical flourish. But I was I went back and listened. She was right. I was kind of condescending. But I hate having to go back to square one. Do I really have to explain to people why we can't have open borders? Why we can't have unfettered illegal immigration streaming into our country? Well, I got a couple of examples. Number one, how'd that work out for the Indians? How did we get this country? How did it get taken over? How is this before Christopher Columbus? There was no Europeans that had any system of government over here, or people of European descent, I should say. Our Western civilization wasn't here yet. A couple hundred years later, all of a sudden, America is a thing, and we're in charge, and the Indians are not. How did that happen? Sounds like unfettered, massive illegal immigration, right? How did we get Texas? That used to be a part of Mexico, only for about 16 years. But in that small little span of time, what did we have? We had tens of thousands of illegal immigrants from the United States flood into this country. And when we far outnumbered the native population, otherwise native population, we petitioned the mother country for annexation. We rebelled. We kicked out Santa Ana. That's how we got this place, was unfettered illegal immigration. So if I have to go back and explain that every show, I mean, it's going to be a bit of a pain, but if I need to, give me the reminder. So on the contrast to that, if that's not what needs to stop the riots, what does need to stop the riots? There was a guy that called in. He had a good idea. Water cannons. Can we still use water cannons? I don't know. I don't know because, I mean, I think legally we can. But I saw something online that I don't know if this is true or not. But if it is true, it's a great idea. That in Japan, they don't use water cannons. They do spray them with water, but the water has a blue dye on it. So anyone who was blocking the street or rioting or protesting, it's hard to wash off, and you can go find them later and arrest them, and that could be evidence used against them. So you're not hurting them with water, you're tagging them with dye. And I love that idea. How have I never heard that before until some random person on X/Twitter floated it across my social media feed? But how do we break up riots? Oh, we know how to break up riots. We know how to end it. They're just threatening to keep the violence, intimidation, and property destruction going until they can achieve their political end. And that meets the dictionary definition of terrorism. And that is an anti-democratic tactic. If you're so in love with democracy, the threat to our democracy, we're the fascist in democracy, then wouldn't you want to affect change through the ballot box, through the democratic process? But here you are circumventing the democratic process, because we had the democratic process. And a majority of Americans and a majority of states said that we want to vote for this guy who's going to do the mass deportations. And the mass deportations are happening through the democratic process. And so you don't like the result of the democratic process. So you're not even a pro-democracy protester. You're a terrorist using violence, intimidation, property destruction for a political end. Terrorist. So how do you stop the riots? Easy. Bring in the cops, push them out the street. Everyone who did it, you get arrested. You get the January 6th treatment. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. What would be your idea for ending the riots? I kind of like the idea of spraying them with dye, with some sort of ink or whatever to mark them, go pick them all up. But I think that the January 6th treatment, all you got to do is subpoena the cell phone data, find out everyone who was blocking the street at a certain time. We can geolocate all these people. Give them the January 6th treatment. That'll end all this stuff before Friday. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. Coming up next, the media's histrionics on the National Guard being called in. I'm James Parker on News Talk 820 93.3 FM WBAP. If you want to win a family 4-pack of Rangers tickets, they're taking on the Kansas City Royals next Wednesday, June 18th, 7:05 Globe Life Field. It's Dollar Hot Dog Wednesday, presented by Texas Chili Company. Get tickets at TexasRangers.com, or it's one of our contests we have rolling right now. The same number I'm giving out for you to call in the show. You can use that. Text the word Rangers to 800-288-9227. You'll be entered in a contest to win a family 4-pack of tickets. That's Rangers. Text the word Rangers to 800-288-9227.
The James Show Podcast.